Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a Ukraine war news update for the 25th of February 2023. Just to give you a bit of news about later, I am probably not going to be able to do a frontline update today. It depends on time, family things like football matches, and then I have a live interview. I'm being interviewed myself by someone else about philosophy. So nothing to do with the Ukraine war, but that's going live on Critical Faculty at 1 o'clock my time, UK time. So if you want to hang out and watch me talk about teleological arguments, then you can. So I might not be able to do my frontline update today. I'm hoping to do at least that or the extra video later, but we shall see. Anyway, on to the news. So as ever, go to the Ukrainian figures for Russian losses for the day before, and all the caveats: inaccurate, propaganda. Russia don't produce the same sort of figures. In fact, all the caveats for everything I say today, which is I am reporting what other sources are saying. Sometimes people accuse me of saying you're saying this. I'm not necessarily saying everything I say is true here. I'm telling you what other people are reporting. And anyway, for the new stuff, it's fairly non-controversial, I would hope, anyway. So 650 liquidated personnel, 12 tanks, 9 APCs, 10 artillery systems, 1 MLRS, 1 helicopter, 2 drones, 11 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 1 piece of special equipment. Okay, so fairly high on the tanks front. That's a bit of an uptick. 9 APCs is also quite a loss. I know that in Vuhledar there was another attempted attack. I think there's some losses around there. Also some losses in Mariupol from whatever it is that's attacking Mariupol, whether it's GLSDB or something else. That could be what's going on with I think some APCs were reported as being blown up there. 10 artillery systems is also quite a loss for the Russians, and 1 MLRS. I've not heard about the helicopter, so that's interesting that one's been added. I have no other news about that, so we'll see if anything comes out as the dust settles. Talking about losses, talking about Mariupol. So an explosion was noted in Mariupol for the third day in a row. So Ukraine are hitting Mariupol on a consistent basis with whatever it is they're hitting it with. We're not really sure what is being taken out there because footage is not coming out of the aftermath. There is quite a bit of footage of the explosions taking place at the time. They're sort of distance explosions at night, Mariupol. So it's quite difficult to ascertain any kind of useful information. That's why I'm not showing them. No reports here says about 50 minutes ago an explosion was noted in Mariupol. Afterwards, a detonation of ammunition was reportedly heard. So last night, apparently there's a lot of cooking off of ammunition in Mariupol. Then no reports as today said 2 BMPs, a tank, a self-propelled gun, were destroyed during some of the latest strikes on a Russian base in occupied Mariupol. It is also reported that around 50 Russians were either heavily wounded or dead. So that is the report from Mariupol, and some pictures. Not the greatest of evidence to support those claims, but there is some. They're obviously hitting something in Mariupol. There's a lot of accumulation down there because they think it's been safe. So in all these areas beyond this sort of 85-kilometer range, there'll be troop accumulations, equipment accumulations, ammunition storage, fuel storage. All of those are now at risk of being hit by whatever it is the Ukrainians have to do that. Now, from the Russian point of view, the new military aid in China is considering sending the military aid China is considering sending to Russia includes 122 mil and 152 mil rounds, which Russia has in dwindling supply. Beijing could be a game changer, said one official, and that's in the Washington Post. I want to talk about that later if I have the chance. That is the only way that the Russians can win this war is with the help of China. That's my opinion. Ukrainian intelligence is reporting that since this morning, multiple Russian warships have been observed leaving ports in Sevastopol and Novorossiysk in the Black Sea, with at least 8 of those ships being missile carriers. And there's also, it can be assumed by this that missile strikes alongside drone strikes can be expected in Ukraine soon. There are also a number of air raids going off as we speak. So today could be a missile day for the Russians. People were expecting that on the anniversary yesterday. It turned out that it was a bit of a damp squib. Not just that, actually, there was very little mention of anything on Russian TV, which might be reflective of the lack of any objectives obtained by this sort of birthday, if you like. Uh, Ukraine says it's putting further defences along the entire border with Russia and Belarus. The whole strip will be completely mined, and the width of the defensive minefield and anti-tank defences will be 2 kilometres. So that'll be fairly tricky for the Russians and Belarusians if they were attacked from that border to navigate. That would be something they need to consider, as well as the difficult terrain up there in that sort of marshy area. And finally, before we get into military aid, up to 200 Kadyriovites were sent as blocking troops to the Russian rearguard in the Bakhmut area of temporarily occupied Ukraine. Enforcers from the Akhmat Special Purpose Regiment, their purpose is to prevent deserters from coming off the line. This is coming from the Ukrainian General Staff, so quite a few people are reporting this. Those are the Chechen fighters, but they're being used to stop, apparently, being used to stop Russian deserters, as it says here, from running backwards. So, as I've mentioned before, you have these echelons of troops with the Wagnerites in the Bakhmut area, where you have the convicts being sent first, and if they sort of retreat, they get hit by, in this case, probably Kadyriovites, and if the Kadyriovites want to retreat and run away, they get taken out by the Wagner proper people sitting in the back. So you've got these three echelons, and each rear set of troops is stopping the ones in front from running away. So it's, you can die going forwards, or you can die going backwards. In fact, going forwards is your greatest chance of success of survival. Running at the Ukrainians. Okay, now on to military aid. Based Boris at work. Germany is really, really stepping up, says no reports. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced the transfer of 4 more Leopard 2A6 tanks to Ukraine, which makes a total of 18 come from Germany. Together with Swedish and Portuguese tanks, Ukraine will have 1 tank battalion of 31 2 A5 or A6 tanks, which is fantastic. In fact, there's loads of news on Leopard tanks today, and it turns out that we've had a couple of days of people walking back their claims or their offers of Leopard 2 tanks. And I presume there's been some chat going on in the back rooms, in these dark, smoky rooms. And all of a sudden, loads of people are now offering Leopard 2s again. So actually, this is a good news day for Ukrainian materiel. Let's have a look at some of that. Sweden has officially confirmed plans to transfer modernized Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Sweden joins the Leopard family in support of Ukraine through the Swedish Leopard 2 tanks, says the Swedish government in a statement. And according to Spiegel sources, Der Spiegel, a German newspaper, Sweden wants to donate 10 Type 2A6 and 2A5 Leopard tanks to Ukraine. So again, that's that's part of the original statement, but that's putting a bit more detail on that. And Der Spiegel reports, indeed, that Sweden wants to hand over 10 Stridsvagn 122, an upgraded version of the Leopard 2A5 with additional armor and grenade launchers. So that could well be these 10 Leopards. It's not that these are 10 Leopards and 10 Stridsvagn, but it could be that those are the 10 Leopard. They're just a Swedish upgraded version. In addition, Sweden will also supply Hawk and Iris-T. I mean, Iris-T is a great defense system. Hawk's quite old, but still going to be useful. Air defense systems to Ukraine to strengthen its air defense in the long term. Poland will send 60 PT-91 Twardie tanks, which are basically upgraded T-72. So those are more Soviet era, but they will be vehicles that the Ukrainians will know well how to use, and if they're well upgraded, or at least well enough, depends on what the optics are, thermal imaging and whatnot will be very useful. But I don't know if that comes with the Twardies. So in the coming days, Ukraine will get those, according to Polish Prime Minister. So Poland really, really coming up trumps at the moment. Indeed, Polish Prime Minister Morawiecki, however you pronounce that, sorry, accompanied the first batch of 4 Leopard 2 main battle tanks to the Ukrainian capital Kyiv this morning. Poland has promised 14 Leopard 2s to Ukraine, with 10 more on the way. So the first 4 are in Kyiv. And this is really good news for Ukrainians. They are starting to get those Leopards into the country, as well as having their personnel trained on them. Poland is ready to, staying on Poland, ready to conduct training for Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighters, the Prime Minister said. However, such a decision must be agreed within a wider coalition, he added. And in fact, I'm going to go to the end here. Not to the end. I'm going to go to here, which is to say that the US President Biden has now ruled out Ukraine's request for F-16 combat aircraft. However, it stated that the request will be reconsidered further down the line once the situation in Ukraine warrants such a transfer. So that's to say that no, it's not going to happen. At least, just not at least not yet. So it could well happen. It's just not the right time, not the right uh, situation with regards to things like logistics, Ukraine's needs. You could give everything to Ukraine all at once, and there are many people who argue they should be doing that. But some of the Western nations are saying no. Let's have a prioritization of what we are giving, and that's just not the right time for the F-16s. Yeah, you can agree or disagree if you like, of course. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced that Canada will send 4 additional Leopard 2 A4 main battle tanks to Ukraine. So that again, even more Leopards. So it really is a good news for Leopards. And then we are going on to some UK equipment. Let's go on to so here's a convoy of Mastiff MRAPs on their way. These are mine-resistant ambush protection vehicles, and the Mastiff with these not quite slat armor, but the extra armor to protect against things like RPGs and whatnot. These are pretty decent vehicles. We've seen a few of them already in Ukraine. There's some video footage, I think, of a Mastiff. Oh no, it might be a Wolfhound actually in Bakhmut. But anyway, there have been these given already, and here are a bunch more being given by the UK. Indeed, we have some more UK info. So UK will provide Ukraine with long-range weapons, Zelensky said. I'll be looking at that a bit later, trying to see if we can work out what they might be. But again, it's this repetition that UK are going to help with long-range weapons. British donated FV-103 Spartan APCs in service with the Ukrainian 127th Territorial Defence Brigade. So these are UK APCs. Looking pretty decent there. Just another example of the stuff the UK has given, hitting Ukrainian territories. And here's an interesting one on American defense spending or American military aid. How some Americans will be decrying how they can spend this much on Ukraine and when there are these needs at home. Well, in the Financial Times, and I'll be looking at this hopefully later as well, quote, over the past 12 months, the US has spent 0.21% of GDP on military support for Ukraine. That is slightly less than it spent in an average year on Afghanistan intervention. In Iraq, the spend was 3 times larger. The Korean War cost the US 13 times as much. So it's about getting the amount of aid that the US is giving to Ukraine in perspective. I think there's a lot of talk about all these billions and people not quite understanding how much that is in the context of everything else, in the context of historically how much the US has spent in certain theatres. And actually, it's not massive. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of money, but it's not this huge drain on the US economy that some naysayers are claiming. Now, over to some sort of geopolitics and whatnot. The Chinese delegation have been in Moscow recently, and they've come up with a 12-point peace plan. ABC News reports that Biden has dismissed China's proposed peace plan. In an interview with ABC News on the 24th, Joe Biden dismissed the peace plan China put forward for Russia's full-scale war, noting that it would likely only work in Russia's favor. Not unsurprising. Quote, I've seen nothing in the plan that would indicate that there is something that would be beneficial to anyone other than Russia if the Chinese plan were followed, Biden said. Biden also dismissed the idea that Beijing would negotiate peace for Russia's full-scale war. I mean, if Beijing are going to be the mediators, if China are going to be the mediators here, then it's pretty obvious who they are going to favor. I think that would be a fairly problematic choice of mediator in that discussion. This is a bit controversial. So the Wall Street Journal is reporting that France, Germany, and UK have got together and are suggesting a defence pact with Ukraine. France, Germany, and the UK believe that closer ties between NATO and Ukraine may encourage Kyiv to begin peace talks with Moscow this year. The Wall Street Journal reported, citing officials from the 3 states. However, when and under what conditions possible peace talks begin is Ukraine's decision, the official said. The official said the decision hints at deepening private doubts among politicians in the countries on the ability of Ukraine to push Russia out of the Donbass and Crimea. This has somewhat upset Ukrainians, given that this indicates that they can't sort of win the war, they can't push Russia out of their own territory, and in fact, they would have to cede some of it to Russia in any such negotiation. So it's a bit controversial, especially since, on the one hand, those three countries are bending over backwards to provide military aid to Ukraine at the moment, and on the other hand, possibly doing these sort of things. So that is one to look out for, and it might cause a bit of a backlash against, particularly Germany and France. The UK seem to be somewhat unscathed. I've seen people sort of slagging off Germany and France because of what's happened over the course of the conflict, with Macron being someone who's tried to get Putin to negotiate. Germany have been very difficult in giving aid, even though now both countries are doing a phenomenal job. I think because of that early history with them, they are being picked on for ire here more than the UK. I think the UK has just been a bit lucky, but that's my sense of sort of reading the socials and whatnot. But certainly, all three countries, that's not going to be welcome at all by Ukrainians. No missile attacks on Ukraine yesterday. As I say, there might be some happening today. And Russia's media completely ignored the anniversary of the invasion. I believe it's because Putin had ordered Donetsk, or at the very least Bakhmut, to be taken, but they failed. The next date is the start of spring on March the 1st. There are different dates, some claiming that by the end of March, Russia have been tasked with taking back or taking the Donbass from Ukraine. And that's highly unlikely to happen. So the Senate, when you put these kind of very difficult objectives on an army without taking into account where they're actually at, different timeframes and whatnot, then you're setting your army up to fail. So I think that's if Putin has really said that, get the Donbass by March, then yeah, it's not a good move from Putin. But yesterday there was a distinct lack of reporting on the anniversary of the war on Russian media, and that's the Kiev Independent were talking about this, about how it indicates that they failed in their objectives, and so they're kind of keeping a bit quiet. Meanwhile, the rest of the world seems to have had quite seem to show quite a bit of support for the Ukrainians. We've seen the Ukrainian colours of blue and yellow on lots of prominent buildings around the world. We've seen here in Georgia, for example, tens of thousands of Georgians have gathered on this day, that would be yesterday, at the Ukrainian Solidarity Rally in Tbilisi, that's the capital in Georgia. The rally also aims to support the Georgian fighters in Ukraine, demonstrates the unwavering belonging of the people of Georgia to the democratic Western world, and more people are coming, so this source states. So really quite impressive support for Ukraine there, and elsewhere as well. I mean, I've just picked Amsterdam here, demonstration in support of Ukraine in Amsterdam. These are all quite sort of positive demonstrations. We saw that the one where the circus music was playing in Germany, and just, I don't know, it seemed quite dour, and I don't know. Again, it's like indications of whether you're on the right side. When you look at demonstrations like this, it's about concentrating on the little things. How many people at these demonstrations? I know there are none there. How many people are women? What kind of diversity do you have? And I say that not as some kind of progressive or anything, but when you look at a kind of a diverse amount of people, then you understand that there's a kind of universal support here. But when you look at a lot of the pro-Russian rallies, and the one that I was looking at in America, which is Rage Against a War Machine rally, and you see a lot of people in like combat boots and shaved heads, and you're thinking, yeah, there seems to be a lot of men here of a certain age that are quite angry or whatever. And I'm not. Again, when you're trying to weigh up which side is right, you've got some kind of universal positivity here against a very much a, guys of a certain age, chanting, shouting stuff. I don't know. I think it tells you something. Anyway, that's the news for today. Thank you for your support. Please like, subscribe, and share. I may or may not be able to get out content later. We shall see. But in the meantime, thank you so much. Take care. Speak soon.